Today we've got an incredible story about power, identity, and faith. It's about how a dynasty of so-called barbarians from the northern steppes managed to conquer China and then used a foreign religion, Buddhism, to legitimize their rule. And in doing so, they changed China forever.
So let's just jump right into the core problem they faced. Imagine this. You're a nomadic warrior. You've just conquered one of the oldest, most sophisticated civilizations on the entire planet. But the people you now rule, they see you as an outsider, an uncultured barbarian. So how on earth do you convince them that you have the right to sit on their throne? Well, this was the exact dilemma facing the Northern Wei dynasty back in the 4th century.
All right, so these rulers, the Northern Wei, were founded by a group called the Xianbei. Now, these were expert horsemen from the vast grasslands north of China. Suddenly, they find themselves in charge of the traditional heartland of Han China. And this, as you can imagine, created a massive culture clash and a real crisis of legitimacy.
And what's so fascinating here is just how different these two cultures were.
I mean, look at this. On one side, you've got the Xianbei, a nomadic, martial culture. Their power came from the sword and the saddle. On the other side, the Han Chinese, an agricultural society run by this deeply entrenched Confucian bureaucracy that valued scholarship and tradition above all else. The whole Han system was designed to keep people like the Xianbei out, not to make them emperors.
So what do you do when you're faced with a hostile elite and a system that completely rejects you? Well, the Northern Wei rulers made a truly brilliant strategic move. They decided to find a source of authority that existed completely outside of that traditional Han Confucian framework. And they found it in Buddhism.
Their strategy here was just genius, and it had a few layers. First off, by becoming champions of Buddhism, they could completely bypass those Confucian scholar officials who wouldn't support them. Second, Buddhism was a universal faith. It appealed not just to the Han Chinese, but to all the other ethnic groups in their empire, which made it a really powerful unifying force. But the third step, that was the masterstroke. They used it to create a new, higher source of authority for the emperor himself.
And this quote right here, this is the absolute core of their entire ideology. Tathagata is another name for the Buddha. So this wasn't just them saying, hey, the emperor supports Buddhism. No, this was a radical declaration that the emperor is a living Buddha on earth. This gave him a kind of divine authority that was just unheard of. It elevated his status way beyond what any traditional Chinese emperor could ever claim.
And you know, this idea of the Buddha emperor, it wasn't just some fancy title they came up with. It became the central pillar of their state. It was a fusion of political and religious power, unlike anything China had ever seen before.
Just think about what this concept really means. It gave the ruler absolute power. I mean, if the emperor is a living god, who could possibly challenge his decisions? His decrees weren't just political orders anymore. They were seen as expressions of divine will. This was how they cemented their absolute, unquestionable authority.
And they really put that power into practice. This chart does a great job of showing how they did it. You see all that massive imperial patronage? It was fueled by state money, and it created a Buddhist institution with immense political clout. This new power base was completely loyal to the throne, and it grew so big it started to directly rival the influence of the old-school Confucian elite.
But, and this is a big but, this radical fusion of faith and state was anything but stable. When you tie the throne so closely to a single religion, it makes for a very volatile political landscape. So the dynasty's relationship with Buddhism would swing wildly between two extremes: incredible generosity and just brutal violence.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It's wild. In the mid-5th century, you have Emperor Taiwu, who gets paranoid about the Buddhist institution's growing power, so he launches a massive persecution, destroying temples, executing monks, the whole thing. And yet, just a few years later, his successor kicks off one of the greatest acts of Buddhist patronage in history, carving the magnificent Yungang Grottoes. These are huge cave temples filled with statues of the Buddha. And get this, the faces of the Buddhas were modeled on the emperors themselves. So, despite all that turmoil, and even though the Northern Wei dynasty eventually fell, their actions had a permanent, profound impact on China. They had forged such a deep connection between Buddhism and the state that it became an inseparable part of Chinese identity. Their legacy is literally carved in stone. They left behind these monumental cave temples at Yungang and later at Longmen. These are now UNESCO World Heritage Sites. But their legacy is also cultural. By making Buddhism a state religion, they basically fast-tracked its transformation into a distinctly Chinese Buddhism, creating a model of faith and government that would influence powerful later dynasties like the Tang.
And just to give you a sense of the sheer scale we're talking about, one of these sites, the Yungang Grottoes, has over 100,000 Buddhist statues carved directly into a limestone cliff face. This was devotion on an industrial scale, and it was all driven by imperial power.
So, when you boil it all down, the crucial point is this. The Northern Wei, these outsiders, used Buddhism, this foreign faith, to solve a political problem. But in doing so, they sparked a cultural revolution. This period of fusion and conflict fundamentally redefined what it even meant to be Chinese.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The story of the Northern Wei shows us that this fusion of faith and state can create breathtaking art and forge entirely new identities. But it also shows it can lead to violent persecution and absolute unchecked power. It really leaves us with a critical question, one that echoes through history. What happens when faith and power become one?